Setting up an anchor for your small boat is a really simple process, but there's a lot of confusing information on the internet because not many people talk about setting up an anchor for a small boat. They all talk about big boats. So let me give you a quick rundown on exactly how to set up an anchor for a small boat. So a few components that you need, obviously you need an anchor. And look, you can't really go past this type of anchor. It's called a Danforth anchor, and it just digs into sand, mud, or any sort of bottom apart from rocky or coral stuff. So if you're in rocks or you're in coral, it's probably not a good idea to anchor up. Although you can buy a reef anchor, and reef anchors are this type of design. And what you can do with a reef anchor is you can bend the prongs on it, sit it in amongst the rocks, and when it's time to go, you just pull it really hard and get your anchor back. Not a good idea to have chain or anything on a reef anchor, so just attach it to a bit of rope, will work fine. They don't hold fantastically well. They're just designed to sit on some reef while you're fishing. Not really good for the reef, not really good for the rocks and stuff like that. I don't use them myself, but if you want to use them, that's what you can do. But setting up a sand, or what they call a Danforth anchor, is really simple, and let's go through the process and I'll show you exactly how they work. Now, I don't use my anchor too often because I fish with lures all the time and I use my electric motor a lot. If I am going to anchor, I'll just anchor up overnight or on a beach or something like that, so I don't need a lot of rope. But you do have to have a rope that's strong enough, obviously, to hold your boat. I did have an anchor rope break on me a couple of weeks ago because I was in a really heavy swell overnight at Torres Straits and it was just horrible weather. I shouldn't have really been out there. But normally this is more than enough strength for a boat for my size, and you know, my boat probably weighs about 1,000 kilos with all the fuel and everything like that in it, so that's plenty of rope. And you notice I've got some tied off here. I run about 20 meters of rope normally, and I've tied off another 20 meters in case I ever need it, because generally speaking I never do, and I don't want to have 40 meters of rope to sort out. I just want to have 20 meters of rope, so that just stays in there tied off. And I've just got my own anchor rope. Now I've got a really big anchor well here, so I can go up to a fairly large size anchor, but let's go over to the anchor now and let's have a look at different size anchors you can use for your boat. Now the anchor I use for this boat here, now this is a 4.5 meter boat. Like I said, it does weigh about 1,000 kilos when it's all loaded up. And this is a 10-pound Danforth anchor. You can get smaller, you can get little 6 and 5 pounds, and you can get bigger obviously. So a 10 pounds pretty good for a boat about this size. 10 pounds would probably work. We specialise in boats up to about 6 meters on this channel, so 10 pounds good enough. If you've got a smaller boat, I'd go to a 6. I've got a smaller boat here, my 4.1 bluefin I should say, and that runs a little 6-pound Danforth, and that is more than enough. It's how you rig these up that makes them work, and I'll show you exactly how they work. Now, to make the anchor work, it's really important that you have a chain. Now, chain comes in different gauges, if you like. That's a 1/4-inch gauge chain. Fantastic for smaller boats or lighter boats, like a little 4-meter tinny or something like that. I've got a 5/16 ounce chain. The reason why I go for the heavier chain is because I'm not a big fan of having a massive length of chain. Now, if you read a lot of forums and stuff like that, they'll all say your chain should match the length of your boat. So I've got a 4.5 meter boat, and that means I'm going to need 4.5 meters of chain. Well, I'm not a fan of dragging in 4.5 meters of chain or even letting out 4.5 meters of chain. It makes way too much noise. There's way too much chain clunking around on your boat, way too much weight in the front of your boat as well. So I've got 2 meters of chain here, but I've gone for the 5/16 inch because it's heavier. So what's more important, the length of the chain or the weight of the chain? The more length is just going to give you more weight, and that's all. So if you've got a heavier chain but you're running it a bit shorter, you're going to have the same effect as if you had a lighter chain but had twice as much length. Just how it works is like this. How an anchor works is that it's got to drag along the bottom so that these blades, if you like, dig into the sand and they catch the sand and the anchor is attached. Now, why you need that chain is because the pivot point of this anchor needs to be fairly parallel to the bottom for it to dig in. Because if you lift it up any greater than, what's that, a 35-degree angle or something similar to that, the blades are off the bottom, and that's how you retrieve this anchor. You get up above it, or you get on a fairly acute angle anyway, you lift the anchor up, it pulls the sand out from underneath it, and the anchor will come back with big clumps of sand sitting on top of it, which shows it's just been doing its job. So what the chain is for is to keep that flat, hopefully dead on the bottom, so that when it does drag, it digs into the sand, catches all the sand, and that holds you where you need to be. Without the chain, this thing will just bump up and down and it'll never hold. So get a fair bit of chain. If you want a short chain, go heavier. If you're going for a long chain and you don't mind a fair bit of length, then go for a thinner chain. So just before I put this whole thing together, there's another little thing that I want to show you that I do now. And once again, I snapped an anchor rope the other week. So I've got a shock absorber, I've got a big spring on my anchor rope. So next time I anchor, it's going to have a lot less pressure on that anchor rope. And when I sleep in the boat when I'm anchored up for the night time, because I roll my swag out in the boat, it's going to be a lot less jarring because it's not pulling on the anchor rope. So putting a little spring on your anchor rope is an option. I'll just show you how I do mine. So you obviously don't have to have a shock absorber on your anchor rope, but if you're anchoring up in a bit of swell, they're a really good idea to have it, especially if you're anchoring up overnight. Because as you can see here, as the swell hits the anchor rope, you can see that it just takes all the spring, and you've got to pull it fairly hard to tighten up on the rope to stop the band from snapping. And look, this is a really cheap and easy setup. This is just some rubber cord off a spearfishing gun, and I've just fed it through the nylon rope, and after it's been fed through, because it's nylon, I've just heated it up on each side to stop it from unraveling, and that does the trick. And like I said, I don't use my anchor too often, but if I do, it's usually an anchoring up overnight, and I sometimes sleep in the boat too, so having that bit of shock absorber stuff works really well. So putting it all together, you do need a good quality D-shackle. Just get the D-shackle to match, I've got chain clunking everywhere here, the size of your chain and the size of your anchor. You can see the D-shackle I got there. That's a 10mm D-shackle. Fits this particular chain perfectly. And the other thing, sorry about all the clunking, the other thing about the D-shackle is there's a couple little tricks to stop them from undoing when they're set out overnight. Because as you can imagine, during the night, the chain gets pulled on that shackle and that can unwind. A lot of people will use wire, but a little trick that a mate of mine showed me only the other day, and I'll just... Because what happens with wire, the wire goes rusty, of course, and you've also got this really sharp bit hanging off your D-shackle, but he just uses a cable tie. So wrap the cable tie through there, and then as you can see there, once you pull that cable tie tight, that can't turn, and you don't have anything sharp hanging off your D-shackle. So when you're pulling it out or you're lifting it up, you're not going to cut your hands open. So that's a great idea, and you know, they're worth nothing, so clip them off. I keep a few packets of different size cable ties in my boat all the time, so that's nice and easy. So look, if you only got a small boat, you don't have to worry about all that crap they go on with about anchoring and how much rope and chain and everything you need. Just keep it real simple. Get yourself some good quality. I just got cheap nylon anchor rope here, and the nylon rope works really well with me because I've got this big shock absorber thing going on here, which is really easy setup. I've got my D-shackle connected to some spliced anchor rope, and that's got the cable tie in it, so it's not going to go anywhere. I've got my heavier anchor chain. I've got a 5/8 anchor chain connected to a 10-pound anchor, and that's once again D-shackled with the cable tie on that as well. So look, that's all you need. I've only got probably less than 2 meters, about 1.8 to 2 meters of chain, and I've got plenty of rope there. I've got 20 meters straight out, and I've got another 20 meters in reserve. So look, keep it real simple. You'll never have any issues if you set your anchor up like that, except if you do what I did and anchor up in 20 knots wind to Torres Strait.